Got Review. This is the 6th one. Parts 1 through 5 can be viewed in a museum somewhere. A strong theme throughout Game of Thrones, and more aptly the books it's based on, is familial love. It's everywhere. After all, what is Ned's final test? What motivates Oberyn's vengeance? What is the core idea examined by the main character's story?
Love is the death of duty.
I've talked a lot about the Starks in this series and how they all still mostly love each other despite it all, and how that love guides their actions in a mostly positive direction. But there's another family I've yet to discuss in full. A family who has a lot more love and a lot more despite. And that's the main thing with the Lannisters. They're just a lot. Hi, I'm the everlasting Globstopper, and in today's necromancy I'll be reanimating the corpsey remains of my Got Review series, and examining the even corpsier remains of Game of Thrones Season 1 through the lens of Jaime Lannister, whose corpse status is somewhat controversial. I hope that's of interest to you.
Are you kidding me? I would never miss whatever this is.
If you've forgotten how this works, or if you're new here, which is most of you, what we do in Got Review is go through the Season 1 character at a time, gleaning what we can from their specific story until we've talked about every scene. Jaime is only in 7% of Season 1. You may not even consider him a main character yet. But this is what my Council of Anonymous Benefactors voted for.
I love democracy.
Oh, also we call the show Thrones and the books The Song around here, just to make the video less accessible to newcomers. Also, you have to listen to me singing sometimes. This is a weird format, honestly. Okay, that's housekeeping done. Off we go. Got Review. Jaime.
There are no men like me.
That's Jaime Lannister.
Only me.
Sir Jaime Lannister, Kingslayer, the Young Lion. Good old Jimmy Two Hands. That's one of my favorite facts about the Jimster, that he's got two big, beautiful, capable hands. We love Jingly here, just try not to think about all that.
To be honest, I never really cared much for it.
Potatoes.
Innocent or otherwise.
Just as in the song, we first meet Jaime at Winterfell in King Robert's procession. Just kidding, it's a freaky little extra scene that I'm gonna talk about for way too long. Benioff and Weiss actually wrote new introductions for all the main characters, except for Daenerys and Joffrey, if Joffrey counts. Joffrey doesn't count. The Stark's introductory scene is excellent, and I rave about it whenever the opportunity arises. It effortlessly and unobtrusively weaves narrative and character exposition, and only serves to enrich the relevant characters without undermining the introductions George wrote in the song. Tyrion's first scene is certainly weaker than in the song, but it accomplishes what it sets out to. Game of Thrones lacks the internal monologuing narration of the song, so I can see the need to put Tyrion and Jaime on screen together while you can. After all, from episode 2, they won't see each other for another 3 seasons. I can't wait to discuss their touching reunion.
A toast.
Wait, what the fuck is this? I have a lot less grace for Jaime and Cersei's first scene though. If you ask me, which you sort of did by watching the video, this scene makes for a markedly worse introduction for every character present. Jaime, Cersei, and of course, the Iron Throne. Yes, the Iron Throne is a character. If I can find it on AO3, it's a character. Also, Jon Arryn is here. They did film a death scene for him, but it sounds goofy as fuck, and it's probably a good thing they cut it. If this interview with Jon Arryn actor John Standing is correct, then the scene also implied that Cersei killed him, which is wrong? What do we have to give to see that supposed train wreck of an unaired pilot? By the way, some scenes in the aired pilot that we're looking at right now are directly from the initial shoot. They weren't remade. Anyway, the scene that actually exists. Honestly, it's just sort of weird. It's a strange thing to add. It's nice to get a good look at the Red Keep before the plot gets here, and it gives us this invaluable establishing shot of King's Landing, but I have trouble seeing what it adds. The other extra scenes act effectively make up for the lost narration from those points of view in the song, but Cersei and Jaime aren't point of view characters in the first book. We're not supposed to know what they're thinking and what they get up to when Tyrion or the Starks aren't around. And unlike those scenes, this one doesn't really provide much characterization and there are no boobs on screen. All we get is that Jaime is a smug hottie who doesn't afraid of anything and likes to wear upholstery, and Cersei is a worried hottie who is freaking out about some secret that could get them executed. Yeah, I don't know, considering the rest of this season and knowing these characters, this is a perplexing introduction. It doesn't do anywhere near as much as the other Benioff and Weiss intro scenes. All the information presented is accurate, but I don't think these are the most pertinent aspects of the characters to introduce. What this scene does do is tell us the hand of the king is dead, which if anything subtracts from the next scene with Catelyn and Ned where we find that out, and it gives us a window into how close Cersei and Jaime are, which subtracts from the episode's final scene. It's our new first look at these characters, which subtracts from the way George chose to introduce them to us in the song, and the Iron Throne is just sort of weirdly hanging out back there, which means that this extra scene isn't our first look at it, which is criminal, and this scene should go to jail. I don't think the dialogue indicates one way or another whether the Lannisters actually killed Jon Arryn, but I do want to point out that Jaime says something extremely stupid the third time he opens his sexy little face hole.
What if Jon Arryn told someone?
But who would you tell?
Literally anyone, Jaime. You know, the thing that happened. And wait, why did Cersei think that Jon Arryn knew the thing? Like, how did she know that? And if she did, then why didn't she kill him? Maybe I simply dislike the way this is framed. Jon Arryn's murder is the whodunit mystery guiding Ned's story throughout the season, and this scene clouds things by giving us the apparent villain's thoughts before the heroes. Like it's fucking Columbo. But because these two actually didn't kill Jon Arryn, they have to awkwardly talk around it.
Whatever Jon Arryn knew or didn't know, it died with him.
And this line in particular almost gives away that they didn't do it. Like, why would you say it like that if you did kill him? And in the book, the first glimpse of Cersei and Jaime's scheming is given to us through the eyes of a frightened child who doesn't know what's going on, Bran. Some lines from this scene are lifted from that chapter, and that scene in Thrones completely lacks the political scheming. Bran doesn't hear them arguing about Ned or Jon Arryn, he just hears the deli meats getting to know each other. The context of Bran's precarious situation and the weight of what Jaime does to him makes this conversation terrifying in the song, whereas here it's almost humdrum. Jaime is flippant about the political situation in both versions, but because he doesn't do anything in the Thrones scene, the flippancy makes him sound bored talking about this.
Whatever Jon Arryn knew or didn't know, it died with him.
While in the song, he's a thrilling villain because after callously shrugging off the insane politics he's found himself in, he then pushes a boy out of a room hole. Get defenestrated, idiot. That all said, and this might make me sound like a crazy person, but I don't hate this scene. I actually barely even mind it. I think it's messy, it has obtuse exposition.
As your brother, I feel it's my duty to warn you. You worry too much.
Perhaps as an overcorrection for test viewers not getting how these people are related to each other, and there are clunky ramifications and it gets in the way of better introductory scenes, but by itself, it's fine. How could a scene with this line ever be bad?
And Robert will choose a new hand of the king, someone to do his job while he's up fucking balls and hunting whores.
On first watch or even third or eighth watch, the scene is fine. It's just that overthinking its kick-on effects leads me to finding its waters muddied. Should we be overthinking good scenes so much that they become bad? Does this approach ruin otherwise enjoyable media? Perhaps for some, but I think someone should overthink things, and I wouldn't lay that curse on anyone else's brain, so it's gotta be mine. Focusing on what this scene contributes to Jaime's overall season 1 story, if such a thing even exists, it sets up that Jaime is outrageously confident.
You worry too much.
To the point of fearlessness.
You were never afraid.
Uninterested in responsibility.
That's a none I can do without.
But not stupid. In contrast to his sister, Jaime isn't a worrier, not a plotter. He seems to not give much mind to the future.
And life will go on.
This guy lives in the fucking moment and appears to only care about his sister. It's only a short step from there to the hot-headedness on display later on. As I said, everything here is accurate and functional. It's just not what I would necessarily consider the foremost aspects to introduce. So that's that one scene. Oh, how I missed yapping like this. Got reviews back, everyone!
I'm back, bitches!
Then there's the actual time we meet Jaime, the one that the guy wrote in the book from a while ago. He doesn't do anything in this scene, he just exists hotly. Thankfully, ADR, Maisie, and Sophie are here to tell us who he is.
That's Jaime Lannister, the Queen's twin brother.
Would you please shut up?
I want to point out that the first direct mention of Jaime in the song is in the first Daenerys chapter, and it's not by name, it's by alias. Kingslayer. Meanwhile, in Thrones, that moniker isn't mentioned until episode 3.
Kingslayer! Get in here!
I just think it's sort of crazy that we're not given this foundational information about Jaime any earlier. We learnt that never again mentioned story of Jaime jumping off a cliff when he was 7.
When we were 7, you jumped off the cliffs at Castle Rock.
Before learning that he murdered the king, the one thing that everyone knows about him. Cersei tasks Jaime with finding Tyrion, so it's time to bust out the old censorship stickers.
Should I explain to you the meaning of a closed door in a whorehouse, brother?
You have much to teach me, no doubt.
Contain yourself, Roz.
My lord?
God, I'm in love with season 1 production design. This scene is from the original unaired pilot, which you can tell from Tyrion's different hair. I'll try not to think about how I'm reviewing things filmed 16 years ago. It's normal to be fixated on something for over a decade. Don't worry about it. In the Tyrion Got review from 5 years ago, don't worry about that either, and it's also a Jon video for some reason, maybe you should worry about that. I go on a minor tangent about how long Tyrion's known about Jaime and Cersei's relationship. Somehow I completely missed this line.
She has odd cravings, our sister.
Which is a cute, subtle way of telling us that Tyrion knows before even we know. Tyrion says he's too busy having awesome sex with a stranger to have dinner with his family, so Jaime helps him speedrun the brothel because he doesn't want to make conversation with, like, Ned or John. Anyway, the next time we see Jaime, he's going out of his way to talk to Ned. He contains multitudes, this Gimbler. Of course, Ned cares about his family more than anything else, and as we'll come to see, the same is true of Jaime, but this never even crosses Ned's mind, because to Ned, and basically everyone, as we'll come to see, Jaime's actions have already spoken for him. So again, it's weird that we, the audience, aren't yet privy to Jaime's actions, the things he's done that explains Ned's prejudice. We're not even aware that he's done anything, except jump off a cliff as a kid. Oh, I get it, it's sort of like foreshadowing. It's like free verse poetry, it sort of doesn't rhyme. But I do need to praise Thrones here for putting these two up against each other in this extra scene and the one in episode 3 as well. In the song, the first and only interaction we have between these two is here. There's something to be said for that, but to me, the direct build-up of animosity between them is welcome.
When I fight a man for real, I don't want to know what I can do.
Well said.
Like, that's just so much fun knowing what happens later. But maybe I'd just love any scene with Ned and Jaime on screen together. They're such fantastic opposite sides of the same coin. Ned and Jaime are both deeply obsessed with honor and their families. It just manifests in completely different ways because of who their families are and their past personal actions, which were largely informed by their families. They are such paradoxically similar people, and Jaime is acutely aware of that, while Ned couldn't even comprehend the idea. But ask yourself, would Ned have done the things Jaime did to save his sister, his wife, his daughters? Ned tries his best to maintain his honor and not stoop to the violence of King's Landing, but when push out the window came to shove out the window, Ned prioritized Sansa's safety over his own life and his honor. He intended on telling Robert something that would put Cersei's life at risk and her children's. Had the opportunity arisen, would Ned push Joffrey out a window to save Sansa, Arya, Lyanna, Catelyn? Would Ned kill his king to save a city even if he was oath-bound to not harm him? Ned thinks he knows the answers to these questions. Jaime does know. Then he shoves a kid out a window, and that's it for episode 1. In episode 2, Jaime is eating one of these things when Tyrion... Okay, fine, let's taco about the window scene. We can even burrito about it, or God's willing, enchilada about it. The conversation between Jaime and Cersei that Bran overhears in the song is split up between two Thrones-only scenes, the introductory one and this one in episode 3. So here, Bran only overhears what could easily be mistaken for a wet dog in a custard factory. The little pervert watches Jaime plunge some clunge until Cersei notices, oh gee, it's a small lad, a boy.
Hey, thanks for sneaking in.
In the song, Jaime actually saves Bran from slipping. Here, Bran doesn't really look in danger of falling, and I get the impression Jaime is more capturing him than anything else by taking hold of his little vest buckle here. Gosh, that's a convenient article of clothing.
Ah, you're at that creepy age where you spy on girls, huh?
Cersei insists that something needs to be done about the lad, and just like in the first scene, Jaime's annoyed that she's worried.
I heard you the first time.
He's already dealing with it, and that's Jaime. Worrying is fruitless. Doing gets results, even though they're often awful results that make everything worse for everyone. They really are their father's children, unless they aren't. Jaime compliments Bran on how annoying he is and then asks him, how old?
10.
Probably to properly gauge what he's about to do. Bran is 7 in the song, and aging up the child characters was a good idea overall, but I'm so perplexed that Jaime was 7 in the story about jumping off the cliffs at Castle Rock.
When we were 7, you jumped off the cliffs at Castle Rock.
When they could have just said he was 10, and then there's this tragic connection between what Jaime chose to do out of his own fearlessness and what he does to Bran out of his own recklessness and protection of Cersei. In the song, Jaime says, "The things I do for love," with loathing. He hates that he's doing this. His love for Cersei is an oath which forces him to do things he otherwise wouldn't. Jaime's overarching story is about the deconstructing of oaths and what remains of a man once the conventions he is bound to have vanished. So it makes sense that his oath to Cersei is the last one to be examined and done away with. Oh. But here in Thrones, he says it like a smarmy twat and probably gets right back to business.
The things I do for love.
Little known fact, they couldn't legally shove Isaac Hempstead Wright out a window, so the way they got this shot was by catapulting him into the window and then reversing it. Regardless of my petty critiques, it's sort of impossible to do this moment justice. It's obvious in hindsight that the first episode of Game of Thrones should end with this extreme cliffhanger, this final admission of the dire stakes at the core of the series setting, but it didn't have to, and what a world that would have been. Surely this is the moment that compelled all those people to keep watching this show. Many saw the show through to the end for the sake of Jon and Dany and Tyrion, and many acknowledged the show's best moments as being centered around Catelyn or Tywin or Kinvara or Dim Dalba, but this was the first one. This was the hook that caught us and kept us here to this day. Bran, Cersei, and mostly Jaime. So of course, when Jaime finally has to confront Bran so many years later, it's... Wait, what the fuck is this? Oh my god, we're finally fucking done with the first episode. Breakfast, the most important meal of the episode.
And the soup of the day is bread.
Tyrion shows up to rearrange some children and inform his siblings that their attempted Brannicide is unlikely to be upgraded to Bran slaughter.
The boy may live.
Cersei's read the script and says that Bran's life will be miserable if he lives, and Jaime agrees.
Well, even if the boy lives, he'll be a cripple, grotesque. Give me a good, clean death any day.
This conversation is more or less lifted from the song. Actually, it's definitely less. So maybe George did know where he was going with Jaime. Or maybe this was just one of the many seeds he was planting, gardener that he is. Actually, I've got a bone to pick with that particular metaphor, or a piece of cartilage at the very least. George always says that as a writer, he's more of a gardener as opposed to an architect. He's always saying this as a way of expressing that he hasn't meticulously planned every detail of his story well ahead of time, instead sowing many seeds and eventually reaping the ones that survived, the rest presumably dying or going on vacation or however plants work. The problem with this framework is that gardeners tend to plan quite far ahead, George. Good ones, at least. They don't just cast seeds into their beds all william-nilliam. I think a more apt analogy would be saying that George writes like an improv musician. He's coming in with decades of experience and familiarity with every trope trope in the genre, he knows the general structure and tone of his solo, but when he starts playing, he doesn't know exactly what notes he's going to play and which of his phrases he's going to revisit and develop as it goes on, and he's going to pass out next to the dumpster in the alleyway after the gig.
That they once loved.
But that's just my thoughts, don't pay too much mind to them. I write more like a beekeeper after all. Figure that one out.
Hello, brother. Thought I'd find you in a blouse and a beekeeper hat.
After defending his own right to exist, Tyrion says,
I hope the boy does wake. I'd be very interested to hear what he has to say.
indicating that he thinks Jaime did the thing. In the song, this is just after Jaime calls Tyrion a perverse little imp, so in Thrones, this line misses out on Tyrion reflecting Jaime's own perversions back at him. They quickly outline Tyrion's whole fucking thing.
At times you make me wonder whose side you're on.
My dear brother, you wound me. You know how much I love my family.
But not as much as me!
Am I the only one that thinks that this family is finally starting to become sympathetic and relatable? I mean, that's what people want to see, you know?
Jaime gets bored as fuck at Winterfell waiting around for Robert to take him back home, so he randomly interrupts Jon Snow for their only halfway meaningful interaction in the entire show. I mean, Jon does sign off on not executing Jaime in season 8, but that doesn't count for reasons too boring and obvious to explain. So yeah, an extra scene is the only time these two main characters ever have a conversation. Jon is watching Mikken finish up Needle, and Jaime waltzes, saunters, minces over to poke fun at Jon's choices in life and emasculate him. You'd think he'd get on great with Kat. Any words, why did they put this scene in? I get a strong feeling the writers just thought there wasn't enough of Jaime doing things in season 1. They didn't feel comfortable making entire piles of shit up quite yet, so I guess they had to write all these Jaime scenes that are fun and fine and tell us a little bit about him, but don't actually contribute anything of consequence. At least this one has him pissing Jon off by discrediting the Night's Watch, an institution his own Kingsguard is heavily modeled on.
Let me thank you ahead of time. Guarding us all from the perils beyond the wall.
Given the context of season 1, I would grant the benefit of the doubt and say that this is intentional subtext, that we're being told Jaime is as cynical of the Kingsguard as he is of the Night's Watch. But having watched the other things these guys have written, I have to withdraw the benefit and instead grant the detriment of the doubt. After all, the word Kingsguard hasn't even been uttered in the show yet, let alone Jaime's association with it. We've just seen him in some goofy fucking armor, and if memory serves, Jaime never meditates on the Night's Watch ever again, and never has a conversation with Jon Snow ever again. It's a strange missed opportunity, and I still don't know why this character was introduced in an extra scene, only to give us none of the crucial information about him. Lines like this,
I'm sure it will be thrilling to serve in such an elite force, and if not, it's only for life,
would hit so much harder if we already knew a little bit more about Gimli. At the very least, this scene gives Jon a concrete reason for his distrust of Tyrion later on, but in terms of the Jaime story, it just makes him look like an ultra twat, and in retrospect, all that missed opportunity stuff. When Jon regards Jaime in the song, he experiences his bisexual awakening and thinks this is what a king should look like. This is what the inside of a handbag should look like. Jaime missed out on all the King's Road stuff because he was busy practicing his pose for this scene. This young lion shit really is a show, an identity he slips into. He's doing this just for Ned. He loves him so much. Jaime says,
"Thank the gods you're here, Stark."
And by obligation, they slip into an improv comedy session.
So,
we need to take those improv classes.
Yeah, we've got a lot of lessons ahead of us.
Yes, and Tywin Lannister's...
The lads start measuring their dicks, as is the purpose of the throne room, and indeed the entire feudal structure.
The king shits and the hand wipes.
Very handsome armor. Not a scratch on it.
People have been swinging at me for years. They always seem to miss.
Chosen your opponents wisely then.
I have a knack for it.
Jaime then recounts the day Ned's brother and father were killed, and Ned responds negatively for some reason. Jaime is actually trying to relate to Ned here.
He was very brave, your brother. And your father too. He didn't deserve to die like that. Nobody deserves to die like that.
But he's just such a bastard that he can't quite pull it off.
Except for the screams, of course.
out. And of course Ned decided a long time ago that he isn't going to be Jaime's pal, even though their adventures together would be such jocular escapades. Ned judges Jaime not because he failed to save Brandon and Rickard, but because of the principles that guide his actions, or if you ask Ned, the lack thereof. Jaime offers that nobody stood up to the Mad King and saved the Starks. Ned doesn't get a word in here, but you can imagine he doesn't find this a compelling argument. And yet he does eventually co-sign the reign of an unjust and illegitimate tyrant to protect someone he loves. Jaime continues,
When I watched the Mad King die, I remembered him laughing as your father burned. It felt like justice.
He thinks he's appealing to the honorable Ned Stark, that they're speaking the same language of saying the sentence and swinging the sword. Jaime is asking someone, after all these years, to appreciate what he did, consider his viewpoint, but he's received with only disdain.
Is that what you tell yourself at night? You're a servant of justice.
Ned is so caught up in honor and oaths that the most important part of Jaime's character to him is that he's an oathbreaker, a man without honor. When to Jaime, of course, killing Aerys is the most honorable thing he's ever done.
You served him well, when serving was safe.
And you held on to your honor when it didn't threaten your daughter's life. Without realizing it, Ned really does highlight the contradictions core to Jaime's life.
You just stood there and watched. You were avenging my father when you shoved your sword in Aerys Targaryen's back.
You should have stopped the king from setting fire to people. You should have not hurt the king.
So many vows. They make you swear and swear.
What the fuck do people even want from Jaime Lannister? That's the question endlessly pounding the walls of his mind, and the response he's settled on, for now at least, is it doesn't matter what they want.
There are no men like me.
Jaime's story tells us that justice and honor are so much more complex than Ned Stark wants them to be. Ned's story and life ends with a fatal test forcing him to weigh his desire to be honorable and just and alive with his love for his family. Well, Jaime's entire life is a test of those values. And unlike Ned, Jaime has to go it alone. He may sound like a giant prick here, but pay attention to his words and you'll hear that Jaime is warning Ned that his simplistic moralism is going to get him killed here. He's too proud to say it in so few words, of course, but there's a tragedy here in that Ned is so proud of his honor, so convinced of his moral superiority over Jaime, that he's deaf to sincere counsel. This is definitely one of the best scenes created from whole cloth for Game of Thrones and a wonderful prelude to Jaime's interrogations much later in the story. Without giving too much away, it makes Jaime more tantalizing, leaves the audience wanting more of how this guy thinks about the thing he did, leaves you engaged in Ned and Jaime's feud. I like this one. Put this scene up on the fridge where everyone can see. Later, Jaime skulks into Cersei's room, which has an epic flower chair, but Jaime's already wearing the passenger seat of a 68 Cadillac DeVille. Cersei's all up in his grill because he pushed a kid out a window or something.
Calm down.
It's okay, babe, I've got this under control. The kid won't talk, and if he does, I'll kill him, and if people get suspicious, I'll kill them too, and I'll kill everyone until there's nobody left to kill, and then we have hot sex on top of the corpse pile. But if the kid becomes an omniscient god tree wizard thing and you explode the Vatican, then I'll just reconstruct all the deconstructing I've done so I can hold your hand while we get crushed by rocks and everyone's gonna love it. That's strangely specific, honey. Also, I lose a hand and Tyrion grows a beard. And there's something about aphrodisiac crabs, I sort of glossed over that part. Do you smell toast? It's funny that Cersei asks,
what were you thinking?
When this was her in the moment. What does she want him to do? Not try to kill a child? Ugh, women. He then uses a terrible, horrible word that I would never say on the reputable and God-fearing YouTube.gov, and that I'll be censoring as I play the clip.
The war for Cersei's
scuba equipment. Cersei's all sensitive about her scuba equipment, and slaps Jaime, which I guess he'll wear as a badge of honor. He holds her tight. Another pretty good extra scene, hitting us over the head with Jaime's priorities.
I'll kill him, the whole bloody lot of them, until you and I are the only people left in this world.
Aww. Then this scene is paralleled with a boring couple doing boring couple things like pointing out that your childhood friend is still in love with you or accusing the Queen's family of attempted Brannicide and Jon Arryside. Jaime gets 3 extra scenes in this episode. Core blimey. And they're all pretty great.
It's empty, Your Grace.
What do you mean it's empty?
There's no more wine.
Is that what empty means? So get more.
Mark Addy is such a legend. Before we bring Jaime into the scene, let's address this interesting question.
Is that what empty means?
Is that what empty means? Is the wine jug empty merely because it no longer contains wine but instead contains only air? Or is it empty because it has nothing to yearn for?
Do you ever yearn?
Because it inhabits a socially atomized world and experiences none of the joy born from living life with your fellow man, I mean wine jugs. That it was put on this planet to contain wine and is currently not doing that. Is emptiness the status of being denied the purpose of your existence?
There's no more wine.
So get more.
Perhaps, but if we turn to Eastern philosophies I'm about to pretend to understand, then we find that emptiness is often thought of as less analogous to nihilism or existentialism and more similar to ego death in concept. The wine jug is empty because it sees through the veil of its own supposed independent nature. In attaining this pure reflective mind, the wine jug has, funnily enough, become the glass of all things, a central mirror of an inherently connected universe. Or maybe it's just got no fucking wine in.
Let's beat up a philosopher till he gives us the answer.
Kingslayer! Get in here!
Okay, now that is one hell of a way to bring another character into your scene. Have him stand outside the door. After saying he hates his stupid face and his stupid family, Robert attempts to eat Jaime alive.
Must wound your pride. Oh, standing out there like a glorified sentry. Jaime Lannister, son of the mighty Tywin, forced to mind the door while your king eats and drinks and shits and fucks.
As we later see, this does hurt Jaime, evoking Tywin probably does a lot there, but of course Jaime will always have the last laugh over Robert, and while Robert assumes it wounds Jaime's pride, his disdain is more pointed at Robert dishonoring the woman Jaime loves.
Makes me listen as he insults my sister.
Jaime's own pride is already such a fucking mess from decades of being yelled at for the most important thing he ever did, at once tender and callous like the hands of a cellist, or perhaps a masseuse. I don't know if Robert can even touch him. Maybe pride is what keeps Jaime from telling everyone why he killed Aerys.
I want right to the wolf. Judge the lion.
Anyway, we're telling epic fun war stories because that's how men pass the time, and Jaime reminisces about a time Barristan Selmy was the coolest guy ever if you don't think about it too much.
I was there that day. You were only a squire, 16 years old.
In the song, Jaime was 15 when he faced the Kingswood Brotherhood. I'm not sure if this was a weird change they made for some reason, or if Barristan is just having a Biden moment and Jaime's too polite to correct him. What was Aragorn's golf handicap? At least we know now that Big Bazza has chops.
Good fighter, Toyn. But he lacked stamina.
Alright, mate, turn it up.
What did the Mad King say when you stabbed him in the back? I never asked.
He said the same thing he'd been saying for hours. Burn them all.
Let's just blaze on past Robert somehow never asking Jaime about this in 17 years and discuss how this shifts a momentous reveal from the third book to the first season. Like, it doesn't give the whole game away, but it's certainly a major departure. In the song, George holds back all the details of the Kingslaying until Jaime's bath with Brienne, but Thrones is sprinkling them in even this early on. It's a real brick to the face in the song when Jaime tells you the whole universe was going to die, and don't get me wrong, that scene in Thrones is still fantastic and perhaps the best in the entire show, but it is less of a twist because of moments like this. I think it's important that Jaime hasn't talked to anyone about this, let alone Robert and Barristan. Where's this revelation when Barry's guiding Daenerys in season 5, unceremoniously bleeding out on the floor because it lightly criticized us once? So while I do like this scene, it's another muddled addition that detracts from a far more important point. You could argue that the throne room scene with Ned does the same thing, but it adds more than it subtracts through Ned's relationship with Jaime. It's such a wonderful dichotomy. Next! Yeah, that's right. Jory fucking Castle gets an extra scene with Jaime too. Everyone gets to come see Jaime, except Bran. That only gets to happen off screen. Wait, it was on screen? Oh my god. Jory charges on in with a plot item, but Jaime is already stuck on his dialogue tree.
Listen. Do you hear that?
He's not even paying attention. It's like Jory isn't even there. Jaime could be talking to my crazy Uncle Dave for all he cares. Or his crazy Uncle Tigger for all I care. Wait a minute.
There are no men like me.
I'm the only one.
Jaime is arrogant and dismissive and prideful in exactly the ways you'd expect. It's just all the more blunt when dealing with Jory, who he would think of as lowly. But Jory surprises him and appears to get his guard down, if only just a little.
We've met before, you know. Have we? The Siege of Pike. We fought side by side one afternoon.
Like, look at this.
That was a proper battle.
That's not a man in full defense mode. That's a man who's been special summoned from my hand with the condition that he can't attack in my next battle phase. Hey, that's against the rules. Maybe just thinking about a glorious past battle soothes Jaime. The writers think they're clever, though.
That's where you got your scar. Aye. One of the Greyjoys nearly took my eye. I'll remember that till the day I die. I saw the youngest of the Grey.
Come on, guys, leave him alone. What did he ever do to you? They shit on the Greyjoys and talk about crazy Uncle Thoros. Jaime wonderfully describes Theon.
It's like seeing a shark on a mountaintop.
They engage in Theon Greyjoy discourse in the year 2025.
He's a good lad. I doubt it.
That sums it up. Before being interrupted by two of Robert's Hortazans. That completely sours Jaime back up and he resumes being a dick to Jory.
Can I leave this with you? The message from Lord Stark. I don't serve Lord Stark.
Right, but you do serve the king. Jory, where are you going? He serves the king. Why are both of you like this? Why am I like this? Just in case Jory got the wrong impression that he and Jaime were becoming friends, old Jim shows up just to kill him a little bit. And that's for asking if you could leave a note with me. This scene is honestly a bit hilarious when you're just going through Jaime scenes, because all this stuff between Ned and Peter and Kat and Tyrion, you don't know anything about that. It would be even crazier to do this sort of thing in the song. And what we're uncovering here, and what might have been obvious from the beginning, is that the Jaime story in season 1 is mostly a trick of the light, a shadow on the wall, and examining it is an exercise in negative space, acrobatics in zero-G. Each of the other characters I've got reviewed had some off-screen developments affect their stories, but for Jaime, most things are off-screen developments. He's the active villain whose perspective we're not to consider too deeply yet. Less so in Thrones compared to the song, but you get it. He'll get his time in the sun though, and the bath. Stinky lad. So what does Jaime do in this scene? He shows up, questions Ned's role in the city now that he's chucked a wobbly and resigned his hand, tells Peter to fuck off, real, and exacts wrathful vengeance for the injustices visited upon his brother. Because of course, Jaime only cares about two things and only one of them can still be saved, his family. His honor is long gone, so he thinks. Gee, imagine if other people treated you like this for the perceived injustices against their families, Jaime Lannister. Ned takes responsibility for capturing Tyrion, and as far as Jaime knows, that's the straightforward truth. Everyone's swords get naked, and Peter goes to fetch the city watch. Wow, thanks Peter, you're helping. Jaime says he's gonna kill Ned, and it sounds like it's not an empty threat.
Going to open your lord from balls to brains and see what Starks are made of.
That threat is half full, at least. But Ned says that'll get Tyrion killed, and doesn't say that it'll start the war that's starting sooner. The lead up to this fight is so epic in the song, but Jaime rides off at this point, so he doesn't actually participate. Here, he sticks around to have some fun in his sofa outfit. I'd love to know what sort of amphetamine compels Jory to take on the Kingslayer, but as expected, Jaime deals with him effortlessly. His best boy killed before him. Ned fulfills the ancient alien prophecy and transforms into the legendary Super Saiyan. I mean, Sean Bean's stunt double gets into a sick duel with Nikolai Coster-Waldau, which appears to be the one thing in the world Jaime enjoys half as much as sex with his sister. The duel ends stupidly when one of Jaime's men rams a speary boy through one of Ned's leg things, ruining the fun. In the song, Ned's injury comes from his horse falling over while he's trying to save Jory. Far more sensible than a guy randomly shoving a spear through Jaime's merriment, but you can definitely see the merit in putting a cool fight scene with two main characters in the show. Hey look, he's a horse! That's so funny! Everyone laugh! Jinzo is not in episode 6. We don't need to talk about it. Get over it. Okay, so you know how half of Jaime's season 1 scenes are extra scenes? Well, this is the most extra of the extra scenes, in that it was a hastily written post-production reshoot coupled together to make up for the episode running short. Tywin Lannister skinning a stag was taken directly from the story Sam tells in the song about his father Randall sending him to the Night's Watch, and whoever decided to give that to Tywin deserves a hearty pat on the bum. Yes, even if it was one of them. The imagery of Lord Lannister carving up the Baratheon sigil is palpable. You can palp it if you're into freaky shit like that. So what happens in this scene is, hey, wait 39 minutes, why are there mountain clansmen in Tywin's camp? That hasn't happened yet. Oh, waiter, I found a minor error in my dragon show. So what happens in this scene is Tywin gives parenting a try for the first time in 30 fucking years, and as a result, Jaime gets devoured by his father.
What have you done with these blessings? Huh? You've served as a glorified bodyguard for 2 kings. One a madman, the other a drunk.
That's honestly so fucking rude, pointing out what pointless bullshit someone's done with their one fleeting and precious life.
Summoned to court to answer for the crimes of your bannerman, Gregor Clegane, the Mountain. Arrive within the fortnight, I'll be branded an enemy of the crown.
Did you catch that little hesitation in there? Did they know this early on that they were going to give Jaime dyslexia? That's crazy, or I'm grasping at straws. Tywin chastises Jaime for attacking Ned and also interrogates him about not killing him.
Attacking him was stupid. Why is he still alive?
Apparently, there were 2 options and you chose to do only half of both of them. Forget about the dyslexia. Does Jaime have ADHD? Jaime says that he didn't kill Ned because it wouldn't have been clean, but that's a dumb reason, and he had an actually very legitimate reason. If he killed Ned, then Cat would kill Tyrion, and Jaime likes Tyrion. Maybe that's why he comes up with this stupid excuse, because Tywin doesn't like Tyrion and thinks it's dumb that Jaime does like Tyrion. He's starting this war to liberate Tyrion only because the current situation gives him less political power.
If another house can seize one of our own and hold him captive with impunity, we are no longer a house to be feared.
Not out of any love he has for his son. The great irony here is that Tywin talks about how family is the most important thing.
It's the family name that lives on. It's all that lives on. Not your personal glory, not your honor, but family.
All the while actively despising and soon half-assedly organizing an attempt on the life of his youngest son, and currently demonstrating a complete misunderstanding of his other son.
Do you understand?
Even his father doesn't understand how Jaime already feels, where his priorities already are.
When you hear them whispering Kingslayer behind your back, doesn't it bother you?
Of course it bothers me.
I mean, of course Tywin doesn't understand his son. He has to deny a major part of Jaime's life or else he'll explode, for incest reasons. For Tywin, family is the most important thing in that family is a political concept expressing the continuation of your own power. For Jaime, family is the fucking people in his family, and sometimes fucking the people in his family.
Lannisters don't act like fools. Lannisters don't act like fools.
Oh, see, it's like a thing. They did a thing.
You gonna say something clever? Go on, say something clever.
Me? No, I was just gonna make an incredibly dated reference. That's mainly what we do around here.
Your mother's dead. Before long I'll be dead. And you. And your brother. And your sister. And all of her children. All of us dead. All of us rotting in the ground.
And just what was that story supposed to prove? It proves that I am obscenely rich.
See?
So the lion does concern himself with the opinions
No, that's not an opinion, it's a fact.
Unlike Robert's wine jug, it appears Tywin has not achieved emptiness. Daddy gives Jaime half his army to go conquer Riverrun and then tells him he's been a useless pile of wasted potential and it's time to finally make something of himself. You were such a bright kid, but then you wasted your 20s on a pointless arts degree and a YouTube channel nobody will remember in a decade. Your brother's a doctor. Take a fucking look at yourself. Here's 30,000 soldiers. Go do something with your life.
I need you to become the man you were always meant to be. Not next year, not tomorrow.
For an extra scene with two mostly minor characters written at the last minute, it's a pretty fantastic scene. Hey, this is Tywin's introduction, another extra scene intro, who would have thought? And this one's like pretty good. I'd say it's a lateral move compared to his first scene in the song, that is to say there are two great introductions for Tywin Lannister. It's a real stag, by the way. Of course Charles Dance can perform while skinning a deer. He's a real actor.
I could care less what anyone thinks of me.
Incoherent American version of the phrase aside, this is a pretty modern saying, and it's probably petty of me, but it feels out of place. Jaime's not in the pointy end either. I'm sorry, but he's just not. But let's check in on him in Baelor and see what he's gotten up to with his 30,000 soldiers. Get wrecked, Goldilocks. So this is quite the upset to Jaime's situation, starting to look like he's not as in control as he once thought. Crushed in battle by a green boy, his father's words must ring loud and deep through his head.
Lady Stark, I'd offer you my sword, but I seem to have lost it.
Ever the wit, though. You somehow get the feeling that Catelyn's judgment feels even worse than Ned's, but maybe that's just Michelle Fairley's haunting eyes. Mother. At least there's one person who's clear in what they fucking want from Jaime Lannister.
It is not your sword I want. Give me my daughters back. Give me my husband.
Too bad he can't do that. The mountain shark tells Robb to kill Jaime because he's an idiot. Mountain sharks tend to be a bit dull. Robb knows he needs Jimbo as a bargaining chip for his father and sisters, and in the song he adds that Ned wouldn't want a prisoner of war murdered. The scene is a relatively direct adaptation up to this point, so I'm pretty gutted that this was left out of Thrones for some reason, because in response to that, Jaime says, "A wise man and honorable." His respect for Ned is so genuine, and Thrones has such great build-up to it. I'm baffled that they cut this, honestly. It's a guaranteed slam dunk of a line, because it gets the audience to really think about Jaime's relationship with honor and his and Ned's perceptions of each other. Jaime knows he's going to be imprisoned, probably for a long time, so he plays the only card he has. This thing is a Stark. They like honor. How about an honor duel?
We could end this war right now, boy. Save thousands of lives. You fight for the Starks, I fight for the Lannisters.
Unfortunately for Jaime, Robb is the tiniest bit smarter than his father.
If we do it your way, Kingslayer, you'd win. We're not doing it your way.
Ugh, we never get to do it my way. This place sucks. I hate being a prisoner. This goes down a little different in the song. Jaime doesn't ask Robb to duel him. When he knew the battle was lost, he tried to take Robb down, but he stopped after killing a few of Robb's bodyguards, including the Karstark brothers, whose deaths eventually cascade into that whole fiasco. The honor duel thing makes me wonder if maybe some of the things Jaime said to Jon in that extra scene at Winterfell should have been said to Robb instead. Somehow, you know?
Have you swung it yet?
Of course I have.
At someone, I mean. It's a strange thing. The first time you cut a man, realize we're nothing but sacks of meat and blood and some bone to keep it all standing.
I went in a little too overconfident. But of course I was a little overconfident. I mean, have you ever met me? I'm me! I'm a big deal!
After Robb gets named King in the North, Catelyn slips out for a spot of time travel to do a scene from the second book with Jaime. Well, sorta. The conversation is cut up between this scene and the one in A Man Without Honor, when Brienne is floating around Cat. I would call the result somewhat clunky. Both scenes work well as is, but the chapter is better. I suppose they needed to give Jaime a proper conclusion in Season 1 to prime us all for the action he gets up to in Season 2. Wow, look at him, sitting in a cage and such. Anyway, Cat shows up.
Nice stench there, buddy. Smelling real nice. I give you an A+ on smell. Or rather, you get an A+ on smelling like crap. And a solid F- on smelling any good. That guy doesn't smell any good.
Did they let him keep his fucking sofa coat? That's crazy. Jaime starts running his mouth and Cat prepares a witty retort.
Now that is one redhead I do not want to have sexual relations with.
He's like, oh yeah, you can kill me, please, go ahead. And Catelyn doubts it, but Jaime really doesn't fear death.
You were never afraid.
The dark is coming for all of us.
Valar Morghulis, Ramalama Ding Dong, the Vengabus is coming. We've all heard this song before.
Because you are going to the deepest of the 7 hells if the gods are just.
Oh, so now we're judging each other based on things we've done.
In between soliciting his captor and admitting to attempted Brannicide, Jaime somehow finds the time to debate some David Hume.
If your gods are real, and if they're just,
Why is the world so full of injustice?
Joke's on him though, Cat doesn't worship the weird trees, she's normal and worships the seven-faced goober. Catelyn decides that it's not God's fault that bad shit happens, it's Jaime Lannister's fault.
Because of men like you.
Prompting the most epic fucking Shadow the Hedgehog comeback in literary history.
There are no men like me. Only me.
I love him, he's such a pathetic little dream yacht.
My son, Bran, how did he come to fall from that tower?
I pushed him out the window.
Well, that's not very nice.
Of course not! I'm fucking evil!
Jaime tells Catelyn to get some sleep.
It's going to be a long war.
There's just a candidness about him. Nobody else at this point is quite willing to admit exactly the nature of the situation they found themselves in. But Jaime is acutely aware and terribly honest. What an interesting fellow. Catelyn lays down her weapon and Jaime settles in for his long, arduous imprisonment. Years away from home, away from warmth and safety, away from love, away from Cersei. They can never tear us apart. Is it even a sensible question to ask about the Jaime story in season 1? Jaime in the first book is a straight up villain. It's only from the second book that George starts asking us to consider his perspective, his life. Benioff and Weiss peppered their first season with extra scenes expressing Jaime's passion for and loyalty to Cersei, his snideness and his callousness, all elements of his character that will be drawn into question much further down the line, and they get him talking about the defining moment of his life, the king slaying, quite a bit. I love Nikolai in all these scenes. Jaime's my favorite character, by the way. Did I mention that? I feel like I should have mentioned that. And individually, these scenes are joys to watch, but I'm left with the impression that some of them just end up robbing future moments of their weight. The results are good, and the bath in Kissed by Fire is still one of the best scenes in the entire show, in the entire medium, but I do find myself imagining it could have been made even better by leaving these earlier discussions out. Except the Ned scene in the throne room, you gotta keep that. The Ned scenes stay. After all, Jaime is only a minor presence in the first 2 books, yet he's a disproportionate fan favorite in the song. That's how strong his story in the later books is. They didn't have to force him into more scenes in this first season. The closer you look, Thrones and the song become such different creatures, and as we keep finding in this series, the vast majority of differences are complicated and they tend to point negatively. To this day, I still think Game of Thrones Season 1 is a masterwork of drama television, riddled though it may be with tiny nits I can pick for hours on end, but the book it's based on sorta just wipes the floor with it in every way. There are a lot of changes between these 2 versions of the story, even in just the first installment, but how many of those changes are unambiguously for the better? I can think of like 2, maybe 3? The main problem, I guess, is that A Game of Thrones is a work of genius, and Dave and Dan aren't geniuses, it turns out. Anyway, I think we've rambled enough about Jimster Limbster for one lifetime. He's only on screen for 32 minutes this season. What's wrong with me? How do I end these videos? I forgot. I have some horrible news. The video is over, so remember to dislike, unsubscribe, and report for targeted harassment. And try not to think about how this is my first video specifically about Game of Thrones in 2.5 years. Except for the fake Jon Snow, which you can watch on my Patreon. It's only 22 hours long. You've the time. Look at you.
You want to never watch this channel again?
Thanks to my patrons, by the way. They're the ones keeping this ship afloat. I told them we were doing GOT review, they told me we were doing Jaime. This may sound crazy, but I actually do intend on finishing this series so long as people show up for it. Maybe even if they don't. I've got a lot of other videos I need to make too, though. Whoops. I've also got a second channel and a Twitch, and we're on Nebula, and I make music, and we've got merch.
Don't forget to experience the fury of our gift shop.
End screen. End screen. Click the things.